Let's go. Come on. Are we live? It says we're live. What's going on? Welcome back to another brand new episode of Skywalking Through the League. I am your host, Bill Sheehy. And today, I'm not joined by my giant partner in crime, Trey Mitchell. Trey is unfortunately at a wedding. He had real life responsibilities with his wonderful girlfriend. Unlike the people that I'm with today. But because Trey isn't here, we've got some wonderful, wonderful guests. From Slash Film, we've got Adam Frazier. Hold on, let's see if I'm doing it. Oh, well, I'm doing it wrong. Hold on. We're just gonna go ahead and do this as
This is great. This is great.
Adam, how are you today, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
Hanging in there, trying to do my best to be the producer and host. So here we go. We're having a good time.
I'm disappointed I'm not getting the full Skywalking the League experience. I met Trey at Celebration. I didn't meet you at Celebration. Now I'm talking to you, and Trey's not here, and I don't know what to do with that. But
we'll have to have you on when it's the full Skywalking experience. And beyond that, we've also got the Talking Bays themselves, Brandon and Maggie Wainerdi. How are you guys?
Doing great. I was wondering how you were going to do that.
It was good. That was a good intro.
Okay,
feeling real natural, feeling real good about it. Thank you for having us on.
Absolutely. I've been a fan of all y'all for so long. I have tried at different points to get everybody on here, and just scheduling and stuff hasn't been able to work out. And I'm excited to have Maggie on for her first podcast. This it's so effing cool. I really wish that you had told me yesterday, because I was like, wait, as you posted that on Twitter a few minutes ago, I was like, oh shit, this is a big deal. This is a big deal.
I've been asking to be on Talking Bay with a Y for years now, and I keep getting told no. And so now I'm making my own Star Wars friends to invite me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we get started on the show today, as everybody in the Star Wars fandom has been talking about, we're going to be talking about part 5 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Wonderful, wonderful episode, first of all. I'm really excited to talk about it, break it down with everybody. But I kind of, last week we talked about everybody's celebration experiences. And I know, Adam, we've talked a little bit about it. And Brandon, you were actually on the podcast stage. So I kind of want to, both of you separately, we'll start with Adam. How did your celebration experience go? Ups, downs, everything in between. And then once you get off that, Adam, Brandon, I just want to hear what it was like to be on the podcast stage. Because I was seeing pictures of you and listening to your episode with Matt Martin, just seeing the happiness. You can hear it through the episode. But Adam, tell me what your celebration experience was like.
Sure. So it was great. This was my second celebration. The last one I went to was 2017 in Orlando.
Gotcha.
So I don't have a ton of basis for comparison, but I will say that this time around was much better, just in terms of the lottery system and me not having to sleep on cement for
that's
24 hours. That was brutal. I got into pretty much everything I wanted to see, if not on the main stage, on one of the streaming stages. So it was great. And my partner and I, Marissa, we got there Monday before the convention. So we did a whole day in Los Angeles, a whole day at Disneyland, stuff like that. So we really made a whole trip out of it. And it was great. Got to meet a lot of people, including Brandon and Maggie, who we ran into immediately at Avengers Campus.
The first thing we got there.
And then multiple times, over and over again.
It was great.
Awesome. And Maggie, had you been to a celebration before? Or because I know, Brandon, you went to, what was it, the picture that you posted when you announced that you were going to, that you were on the podcast? What celebration was that?
I had been to Celebration 4 in Los Angeles in 2007, and then I went to Chicago. That was my most recent. That was the only other one I've been to. So I've only really been to 3 now at this point. But this was.
Was this your first?
For me. Yeah,
gotcha.
I figured I'd go see what the hype was.
So
and then my first 2 hours there was the Lucasfilm panel, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Jesus.
Pretty cool.
Good Lord. I unfortunately wasn't able to get into that, but just seeing some of the things that I'm just curious. Like my first celebration was in 2019 in Chicago, and that was I was kind of down on the fandom at that point, but going into it and like seeing all these people that I had interacted with, and it was just an overwhelmingly positive experience. And did you feel that, Maggie? Like what's your like? I know you're fairly new to. At least from what I've seen, fairly new to like the Star Wars Twitter space. What was your what were your expectations going in, and then did your expectations get delivered? Jesus, words are hard, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I knew it would be fun. I always knew he had a great time, but I wasn't gonna miss an opportunity to get a Ronto wrap, so I said count me in for the whole thing. Easily convinced with hot dogs, but I've always liked Star Wars, and I've kind of been adjacent to the fan community. Kind of hopped in at the last minute to try to make some friends so that I would know more than one person when I was there, but I think it exceeded my expectations by a long shot. Everyone was so kind and so welcoming, and it was so much fun getting to meet people, and obviously all the content was really exciting to see in person and kind of lit a flame as well. And so now I'm like, next year we're going to London. Like Easter in London could be cool.
Oh, that's awesome. I unfortunately my good friend Scotty J-Ro is getting married that same weekend. And
that's what I heard.
Scotty.
So there is
I hear there's some churches in London.
If Scotty and Katie would do it, I would go, because like immediately when they announced London, I was like, I could go to London.
We got to get Rick McCallum to marry them.
Your plan, Katie.
We got to get Rick McCallum. Maybe they go to Prague. Maybe they get married in Prague.
We get convinced. If we got Rick McCallum to officiate, I bet Scotty would move some mountains to.
Right. You guys say that, and like just between us, there's nobody else watching right now, right? That they might have tried to make that happen in some capacity. So stay tuned. That's all I'll say. But yeah, that's. I'm glad that your first celebration was a wonderful experience, Maggie, and I'm incredibly happy that you're here talking with us, and I'm glad that it was a positive experience for you. And so, like, let's transition a little bit to the day of the podcast stage. That like, it's just a big deal. Period. Like, it feels like it. Did it feel like some sense of validation that like, hey, what I'm doing is like I'm doing good work, and like that to the point where like Lucasfilm or Reed Pop is acknowledging that. What were your feelings the day of? The episode was great with Matt Martin. What were your emotions that day?
Yeah, I was just very nervous and very anxious, and it was good just to kind of get it over with. was my feelings. But it was very nice. We got there really early, me and my producer, just to really make sure that we had it all set up and all the equipment. And then Maggie came, and my producer's girlfriend as well. And we kind of just got the room situated. And then it was kind of a waiting game, but it was really nice as soon as everyone got let in to see friends and fans and listeners and a bunch of people come in. And like, that was, I think, the biggest takeaway for me, which is like being in a room with a bunch of people that I like and admire and that have been big supporters over the years. And then Matt, of course, was really great. And it was fun. It was the first time I've done a couple sort of live episodes before, but this was the first with like an actual audience that I was playing to, and it was fun getting reactions and kind of playing with the crowd a little bit.
So what did you do differently for the live show? Like, because like this is live, but there's no there's no live audience in front of it. Like, what specifically did you notice that you were doing differently as opposed to like just a regular episode, which you get a lot of great interviews with a lot of great Star Wars people. So like, I know that's a different situation, but like what did you do differently? What felt differently?
It was a little interesting because with a lot of the interviews, there's a lot of editing, right? The podcast has a lot of editing. Some of it is just ums and ahs, and you'll hear that while I'm talking. It does not sound like my podcast. And so that is obviously very different with a live episode. But then I was very cognizant of like tangents and how to like craft it. Because oftentimes when I'm editing, especially, we'll move things around or we'll like kind of make things make a little more sense. So there was a lot more pressure really kind of like have a cohesive story.
Mm-hmm.
But then the second is really the familiarity with the guests too. Like most of my episodes start 20-30 minutes after I've talked to somebody, and it's really a testament to Matt more than me, but like being able to have like a little bit of a banter, a little bit of familiarity on the stage after only talking to him for 3 minutes before, so I think that was a big thing as well. But then also, I mean, again, just the crowd laughing or the crowd clapping for random things like Tauntaun's sleeping bags or Star Wars Galaxies was really great. And really,
I was so confused because everyone starts yelling and looking at me, and I was like, how does everyone know about the sleeping bag? It's just in the closet.
That's really so was there a singular moment from Celebration, and Adam, feel free to chime in this, a singular moment in Celebration that you guys will remember? Like, it doesn't have to be like just, the podcast stage. It can be like a little moment. For me, it was, I ran into Matt Martin in the men's room, and like that didn't feel like a super great place to meet one of the people that I really admire. So I just opened the door for him and didn't say a word. So that's what I took away from it. But what was the top moment for Celebration for y'all?
Maggie, you had a restroom encounter as well. Maybe that wasn't your top moment.
Oh, it was. Are you talking about Claudia Gray? Yeah.
Yeah.
She sat down next to. We had dinner with Blast Points and Sky Talkers, and then Jason Cruiser and his girlfriend at the restaurant. At which hotel was it?
It was at the Hilton.
The hotel everybody was at.
Yeah.
And she sits down next to us, and everyone at the table is like, I didn't know. I wouldn't have recognized her by face. Everyone else did, but I had just finished one of her non-Star Wars books, so I definitely knew who she was. We're like not going to bother her. And then I ran into her in the bathroom, and I was going to say something, but then it was embarrassing. I embarrassed myself. There was like a mirror that was like life size and across from the door, and so I like turned and started to walk into the mirror instead of into the door, and like looked like an idiot. And so then I'm not going to turn around and be like, by the way, I know exactly who you are. I just finished your book. I really liked it. My name's Maggie. I'm like, I just, and Charlotte from Sky Talkers was behind me too. And we both like walked over like that was Claudia Gray, and we didn't say anything.
Every person loves hearing, I know who you are in the restroom. That's just a number one thing that everybody loves to hear. But I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome.
It was not my top. It was not
it's not her top moment. But that's a good bonding.
That's why I love Celebration, because you can have those moments. You can open the door for Matt Martin, or not talk to Claudia Gray in the bathroom. But that's wonderful. Brandon, what was the top moment for you?
I think top moment, and so I guess there are two. I'm going to cheat a little bit. One was seeing Harrison Ford in person. It was Maggie can attest, and so can Blast Points, who I was sitting with, can really attest to like it really messing up my day in terms of and like having a mini, like, I don't know what, a stroke. I don't know what it was.
It was like, I think the best way to describe it is like an excitement attack, like not a panic attack because it was happy, but that same level of like manic energy, but positive.
Because
positive manic energy.
Because John Williams played literally the first note of the Raiders March, and I like had like a guttural like. It was like like just from on the first like downbeat.
Yeah.
And then I was like, maybe he's not going to come out, and then it ends, and Frank Marshall and Mangold come out, right, the director of Indy 5, and I really don't clock Harrison at all coming from the other side of the stage. So finally, when I turn and look, and there he is. I stood up so fast. There's a picture. I just start like screaming, and I stand up so fast, and then like all the blood rushes to my head, and then I immediately I'm like, oh, I'm about to pass out. Like I've never felt that way before. Where I was about to like fall over the third deck of that stadium, and so I sat down so fast because I was about to just like faint.
Head between the knees.
Yeah, the rest of the time.
And so he just really like had his head resting on my shoulder for the rest of the panel.
I honestly think that's probably for me that was the biggest surprise, because I never thought Harrison Ford would show up at any Star Wars anything ever again now that he's just not involved. So like having that
he loves Indy, man. He loves Indy. He'll do anything for Indy. So
well, it's so funny because I'm feeling somewhat spoiled by my Celebration experiences, because the two I've went to, 2017 and this one, the first panel of the day that I went into, they both ended with Harrison Ford showing up and with John Williams playing a live concert, because I went to the 40th anniversary of Star Wars panel, and George was there, Harrison was there, pretty much everybody was there, so it was kind of cool.
I wish I had been in that panel, because like, just like John Williams, the maestro himself, like being in the same room, I don't have to meet him. If I'm just in the same room, like I can say, John Williams performed Star Wars in a room I was in. Like that's it. So I'm very, very happy that y'all had that experience. And like
we won't keep rubbing it in. Yeah, sorry.
No, rub it in, because like being at the Kenobi premiere completely and totally like made up for any like kind of not angst or anything, but like just being in that room with everybody, and like O'Shea Jackson Jr. walking by and Sam Witwer walking by and people shouting Kenobi. It was so fun. It just so fun to be in that room. It's something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Adam, let's talk about the top Star Wars celebration moment for you, and then let's transition into a little Kenobi.
For me, it was the Mandalorian experience, because I had sort of knew that they were going to do something like a costume display of some sort, but I was not expecting that. And even, I had talked to Jason and Gabe from Blast Points, and we're texting back and forth, and they're like, dude, your head's going to explode like when you go in there. And so I'm like, okay, great. I'd love for that to happen. So we couldn't get in through the light speed thing. So we just went into the standby line. And I mean, we waited in line an hour and a half or maybe longer. I don't know. But like, there's a point when you are going through it where I was like, oh, well, this is cool. But I thought like, oh, this must be it, right? Like I'm walking by, oh, there's the Razor Crest cockpit, and that's awesome. And Jon Favreau like popped out of the door of the Razor Crest and like waved at us like he was in there.
Oh, that's so cool.
Was so crazy. So I was like, wow, that's awesome. And I'm looking at all these miniatures, and there's Frog Lady, and there's the Mon Cal in the sweater. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I turn around and I see the whole like room that is this experience. Like the N1 Starfighter is just there. Like R5D4 is just there. Baby Grogu is there. Like there's a living, breathing Bantha there. Like it was so overwhelming. It was like when you see the Brachiosaur in Jurassic Park. Like that was the experience I was having, where I was like,
you were taking your sunglasses off.
Yeah. Like I just stared like in blank silence at the Bantha for probably 5 minutes, until I think Marissa came by and sort of shook me out of my haze. But yeah, just getting to see all that stuff, and the Book of Boba Fett stuff, getting to see the throne and all of those props and stuff. It was just incredible. That was like a once in a lifetime experience, I think. So awesome. Glad that I hung in the line for it.
Well, I'm glad that we all had a wonderful time at Celebration. Maggie, I'm so happy that your first experience was wonderful. And with that, I kind of want to transition into the main topic for today, which is part 5 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I kind of want to start with this. Because I think you guys had a similar experience after Celebration. I got COVID after Celebration. I wasn't able to, record about Kenobi for the first 3 episodes. So I kind of want to start with this. Let's start with kind of our initial thoughts on part 5, and if this particular episode affected how you feel the series as a whole. And Maggie, since this is your first pod, let's start with you.
Oh wow, pressure.
No pressure at all, zero pressure. What did you think about this episode, and what have been your overall thoughts on Kenobi?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with overall. Obviously, like we kicked off getting to watch it with a bang. Just the energy of seeing it in the room with everybody was totally different than, my first episodes of The Mandalorian, which was 6 a.m. on the couch.
Yep.
Getting dragged out of bed to watch it before work. And so that really, I love, like I've said, I'll tell anyone, I love little Leia. she can do no wrong to me. I had to go back and watch the whole thing again because like she was really all that I could focus on when we were first watching it. I think the show overall is, I have no notes. It's the balance of getting new content, but also in a, you know, with these characters that we know and love. I love the prequels. I've loved the prequels since before I knew that anybody didn't like the prequels. What's not to like about the prequels is how I've always felt. And so I have a lot of loyalty to those characters in that story. And I love the new characters that they've brought in. And what I really liked about this episode was how deep we got in with Reva and her character. There's really cool stuff with Obi-Wan and Anakin and those ties, but really what was so captivating about the episode to me was getting to like see the different layers of this character and how she's portraying it. It's been one of the most interesting parts of the series. Once I got over how like perfect little Leia is, it's, you know, this super interesting character that started with, you know, a story that we all know, Order 66, which is really sad. And it fitting in this place in the universe where we know what happens before, we know what happens after, but it's this totally unique storyline, unlike anything we've had. And I love how she's playing it. And I love the depth that we got to see between her and Obi-Wan this episode.
Gotcha. Brandon, go ahead, bud.
Oh, no, I also have loved Kenobi. Same reasons, right? I love the prequels. I love Ewan, right? It's been just really great to see him kind of blossom into the Obi-Wan character even more so. I mean, people will always say like he was like the best part of the prequels, blah, 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 which like is a little demeaning, I think, to the entire prequel.
Is. Absolutely.
But he is very good. And it is very nice to see him back and very excited to be in Star Wars. But also that it's such an intense character study of a character in general, the Obi-Wan character, right? The James Arnold Taylor, Alec Guinness, the Ewan McGregor character in general, that is so wonderful to kind of get that filled back in, right? We've had the books and we've had all these different things, but to see it portrayed has been just like miles beyond anything I could have ever anticipated. And then this episode especially really finally kind of doing what everyone assumed, right? Everyone's kind of waiting for it, blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like, oh, we're going to get Clone Wars flashbacks. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I like, it would be cool to see him in the armor. There was an interview. I don't know if y'all saw it, but there was an interview where someone was showing off the tattoos and it was Obi-Wan in the general armor. And he was like, oh, Obi-Wan's wearing the Darth Vader armor. And I was like, okay, so the Clone Wars flashbacks aren't happening. Nope, it's not happening.
That's hilarious.
But having this be the flashback and this be the reason to have Hayden back, and we'll talk a little bit more about those scenes and everything, but all of it combined, right? If it had just been a flashback episode, who cares? But the way that the writers and that Deborah Chow and the actors were all able to really make it so powerful. We were watching it earlier today too, and like seeing the Order 66 flashbacks with the Reva stab scene, all the like, it just so perfect and like is really exemplary of why we don't write Star Wars. Right? Like, because I'm like, oh, like Obi-Wan in the back to tank looking at Clone Wars flashbacks. There's Rosario Dawson's Ahsoka, right? Very easy. But the way that they could really weave it, especially in episode 5, and have it all really connecting, it really is just like a masterful episode. So
absolutely. Adam, what are you on the same page as everybody? I think we're all relatively the same age, right? I'm 28, so I'm a child of the prequels. Those are my Star Wars stories growing up. So I just hearing that, like the sentiment that Maggie said, that like I had no idea that people hated the prequels or like that the prequels weren't good until I was like 13 or 14.
Well, I'm 37, so I was born in 84, but so I grew up sort of in the dark times, as it were. And so I guess I was in like 8th grade when episode 1 came out. And so in that very pivotal stage of like, well, I'm still technically a middle schooler, but also like I'm going into high school, and maybe like, do I hate the prequels? Like, was this bad? Was this good? You know? I would say that my relationship with the prequels in general has been somewhat difficult, but I'm glad where it's landed me. I started out liking them a lot, and I found myself defending them constantly and sort of becoming this like apologist for them, like, oh no, you don't understand, this is what this means, kind of thing, right? And then you grow older. I was taking film classes and stuff, and so then you have this other element coming in saying, oh well, these movies actually aren't that well made, and I started to not agree with everything George was doing in terms of like the special editions and things he was changing and stuff. And when it came time to sell Star Wars to Disney, I felt very good about that. I felt very good about George letting it go, even though I enjoyed, like, I was loving Clone Wars and everything Filoni was doing. I just thought, okay, this is good. Let's get this to somebody else and see what can happen. But now when I watch the prequels, I watch them with nothing but fondness now, because they remind me of, that exciting time of basically never thinking I was going to see a new Star Wars movie again, and getting episode 1 and just like the lead up to that, the toys and like the Taco Bell promotions and like all that stuff, so that being said, I like the prequels. I love Ewan's performance as Obi-Wan, and the series. I was sold from day one because it's Deborah Chow, and she impressed me so much with Mandalorian that it just seemed like a can't miss situation, especially bringing Hayden and Ewan back. So I've really liked the series. It's taken me some adjusting, I think, because I'm a huge Mandalorian, like Boba Fett was my favorite action figure as a kid. Like I really identify with that character and the kind of stories you can tell with those characters. And so I've absolutely loved The Mandalorian and loved Book of Boba Fett, even though a lot of people were sort of just meh on Book of Boba Fett. Like that was the series of my dreams as someone who grew up reading like Tales of Jabba's Palace like 700 times.
Hell yeah.
But so I would say I was more invested in those shows than Kenobi per se, just because we're dealing with a point in time, right, that we already know how it's going to end. So you have to invest in the new characters like Reva, and I think they've been doing a great job with that. And this episode specifically, what bummed me out was killing off Tala and Ned B.
Yeah.
But of course it's like, well, you can't kill off Obi-Wan. You can't kill Darth Vader. You can't kill little Leia. You have to create drama and conflict with these new characters. And so they're inevitably going to become sort of cannon fodder because of that. But I just thought that Indira Varma was so awesome as that character. And I would really like to see more of her. But I don't guess that's going to happen.
Well, you never know. She could show up in Andor, couldn't she? Or is that what's the
what year is Andor set? Is that
it's going to jump around some because it starts like, did he say 10 years before? And then the second season was going to walk into
maybe
Rogue One or something like that.
I think you're right. It's I'd love to see more of her. And I love her as a character. I think she's really, really compelling. But like at the same time, like if she is a reason that Obi-Wan becomes who we see in A New Hope, who we see in Twin Sons, like she sacrificed herself for the mission, for the path, for Leia. So like that, I think that
in very much a scene that reminded me of Vasquez and Gorman from Aliens, where they're like in the shaft with the grenade,
absolutely.
Like she was taking one for the team there. But I also felt like there were some other Aliens references, maybe real or just perceived by me, like little Leia is this sort of Newt character that is crawling around in the vents and stuff. So
is this a good time to say I've never seen Alien?
It's never a good time to say that.
Okay, well, we'll edit that out in post.
Maggie's you've never seen it.
No, I've never seen
Aliens.
Get on that.
I'll get on that.
There's multiple. Yeah.
Ironically, I've seen Alien Resurrection.
Oh, you just doubled down.
I totally did.
Just doubled down. It's like you've never seen Star Wars, but you saw the holiday special.
I did. It was great. I really liked the holiday
Never
special.
seen Star Wars, but has seen Ewoks.
Yeah. Listen, it's a fun little series. So we've been talking a little bit about, I want to transition a little bit into the flashback that we see, because they in a similar way to how they in the first episode are just like, okay, here's Order 66, just full on, just okay, we're gonna break your hearts. The first moment of this episode is seeing a young Hayden Christensen, which I in my headcanon is just before, after this mission, after this training session, they're assigned to Padme.
Yeah, that's the impression I got. Yeah,
I think this is one of the coolest Star Wars things that I've seen, just period. I think it's, once again, my love for the prequels, my love for Hayden, Ewan, all that. So I want to talk about how they present it, because they start and they're like, okay, this is really, really cool, and they keep coming back to it. And I think this could just be me, but Vader's thinking about this. This isn't an Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's not thinking about it. Anakin Skywalker is thinking about this flashback. What do you guys think about what that means for the character of Vader? And I think they're showing us bits and pieces that Anakin is still there. Brandon, what do you think? What was your main takeaway from the flashback?
Yeah, for sure. Again, talking about why I liked it, it's because it was so important to the actual characters, right? It wasn't just showing a flashback to show a flashback to show characters. I think it was very interesting, like you mentioned, the time frame that it showed, right? It was not a Clone Wars Anakin. It was not a Revenge of the Sith. It was a pre-Attack of the Clones, both hands, Jedi braid Anakin, right? Which is why, that in itself is so
not
funny.
what I was expecting.
Full mullet Obi-Wan Kenobi, just full on.
That was what really, for the first viewing at least, that's all I could think about. I was like, well, we're seeing some new Attack of the Clones footage. That's crazy. Part of me loves that they didn't super de-age either of them, right? It was the lines on Anakin's mouth, and it's very much Hayden Christensen now, which part of me can be funny about it, oh look, it's just a 45-year-old Hayden Christensen or whatever. But part of me is like you said, Bill, if this is a Vader flashback, if he's thinking about this, is this how he sees himself, right? Is this what he's viewing himself as right now? Which is heartbreaking, A, but B was just very. I was texting my little brothers.
Hot people love mullet Obi-Wan.
Everybody knows definitely that. Agree. You gotta the mullet Obi-Wan and the Jedi braid with a little ponytail in the back. Anakin, really, you cannot ask for a better start to your Wednesday. That really messed me up. But it was just really beautiful to see Hayden again as Hayden, as he is now after working on a farm for 10 years, right? And just here he is back in Star Wars. And it was that part of me is yeah, it could have been cool to see him as a 19-year-old or whatever it is, and done the little Luke Skywalker special on him. But part of me is kind of grateful that we just kind of got Hayden as he is now, as our Anakin. Here he is. And,
you know what my first thought was when I saw him? Hayden Christensen looks effing great. That's,
if I can look like that whenever how old
when I'm 40, if I'm looking like that when I'm 45,
I look barely older than I did when I was in.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So anyway, loved seeing both of them. It was really nice. And then all these little fan edits now on TikTok and Twitter of it mimicking the Revenge of the Sith Mustafar duel and everything. I'm like, okay, this is great. What a great bunch of scenes. Yeah.
Maggie, what did you think?
We agree and disagree. It's also so cool the way they weaved it through and how it connected to the story, and it shows that, for as strong as Darth Vader has become, there's, this weakness that is still there, just in terms of perception of his own power. Very cool. I think it could have used a little bit more of a blur tool, to be honest. Not nearly as much. Your explanation was so beautiful, you almost convinced me. But honestly, I think there's no shame if you're playing someone a little younger. I was like, is this a real scene or is this like an imaginary scene happening? It took me watching
that's interesting.
Because as I don't have the same like memory for what costumes were happening in which scenes, so I couldn't immediately place it as before Attack of the Clones.
You weren't looking at his hands the entire time.
I mean, honestly, I wasn't, because I was looking at because it was so cool to see them on screen.
Yeah.
Big fan, and he looks great, by the way. I have no complaints about how they look objectively. Let's be clear there. But from knowing that not everyone has the same like encyclopedia of knowledge and can immediately place it in the universe, my first thought was like, are they having a conversation in their minds? Is this really happening? Is one of them dreaming this? And I had to watch it. We were discussing it before. My immediate go-to wasn't this actually happened, because they did look a little older than they did in the prequels. And there's no shame in that, but I do think for storytelling purposes, I would have taken a little bit more of a blur tool personally. I can admit to that.
I think a little more, blush. You can contour a little bit more, and I think it would have looked great. But like that's just me. That's just Bill talking.
I think it's totally passable. I didn't have any issues with it, but I agree with Maggie that I would have liked to have seen a little more of the de-aging, just because it was sort of jarring. Like when he showed up, it was like, oh, it's the 40-year-old Padawan,
that is a movie poster. If I've ever that's
the next Star Wars story.
That is the 40-year-old Padawan. There it is.
But it's not a huge deal to me. It felt like it feels like Lucasfilm's trying to fine tune this and see what's the line and what are people willing to accept? What do they like? What do they hate? Because they've done a lot of different approaches to this technology and really mixed results. Like the fan base seems like very split on it. Whereas I loved seeing CGI Tarkin in Rogue One. I loved seeing CGI Luke in Book of Boba Fett. There's a group of fandom that just like absolutely hates that idea. And then, at the same time, I'm willing to admit that there still needs to be some things that are worked out. I mean, I think just the jump we saw from the end of Mandalorian season 2 to Book of Boba Fett with what they did with Luke was like pretty mind blowing.
Yep.
And here it was like they were choosing deliberately to not go that far. It was like, we're going to scale this back to this level and see what people think of that. And maybe that's just a result of Hayden being still relatively young and obviously not the same age as Mark Hamill, but
I think I don't know if y'all saw Hayden while he was like, at the Star Wars show, the live stage or anything. That dude, he said one word and people started clapping. Like that's all. Like I think part of it is that just I think they know that like who their audience is, and like that they want to see Hayden. And as much as I love the prequels, I know, and I've seen Hayden do other stuff where he's done really, really well. I think they want to give him his due, I guess, is the best way to say it. Because like once again, I kind of feel like what you were talking about earlier, Adam, where you said apologizing for like, there are parts of the prequels that are just like, okay, some of the dialogue is a little bit iffy. Like, hey. I think I love it. I love it.
Disrespecting Jonathan Hales on this podcast.
I don't mean to, but like having the same cast from the prequels work with, dialogue that is, I hate saying it because like I love it, quote unquote, well written, and like what did Harrison always say? You can write this stuff, George, but you can't say it.
Yeah.
So like it's a little bit of that. I think they want to give him a little bit of an opportunity to like show his chops a little bit, and I hope they continue to do that when he inevitably shows up in Ahsoka, because like my sister and I are really, really close, and like we like universally love Hayden Christensen, and so like the first thing we texted each other when we saw the episode was, man, how great is it to see Hayden? Like it's just that. And I think that's what kind of works for the flashback, is that like, yes, it's to me, it's Vader thinking to, he's still learning from Obi-Wan. He's still doing all that stuff.
I think too, it's worth mentioning that, you know, when Hayden was making these movies, the original movies, he was extremely young.
Yep.
And he was also thrust into a very high profile, high stress role. And he was also doing a kind of filmmaking that was on the cutting edge, and that, you know, for someone relatively new to it, you know, like it's very hard to act against nothing but green screen. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's elements of those movies that I think you see that on screen, that people are maybe having a tough time interfacing. But if you look at now with the volume and the ability to like be in this closed space with the actual surroundings, you know, like you're going to get better performances. You know, imagine if the volume would have existed during the prequels. I think a lot of those issues that people would chalk up to writing or performance, they might not exist because the barriers are removed, I think. And so, yeah, it's an opportunity for Hayden. I mean, look, we're Star Wars fans. We love a redemption arc. And like, whether you think Hayden was a bad actor or not, obviously there's a stigma towards that. And so it's nice to see him come back, and it's nice to see him sort of get another chance and add something more to the character. So, and yeah, you know, if you're going to bring him back, there is part of me that's like, well, if you're going to bring him back, don't cover him in CGI, like, because that doesn't make any sense.
And
so
don't cover up him in the suit. Don't just cover him up in the suit. Which I'm glad.
That, so. Yeah,
that's true. That's a good point. That's a good. They have 3 other Vaders besides Hayden. So
bless their hearts, but so many people are like, oh, and like, look at Hayden Christensen walking in this suit. I'm like, that's not him. That's not him.
We saw him walking the suit, and it rendered the Sith. We know what it looks like.
I love seeing Pedro Pascal in the suit in Mandalorian. in
the 2 scenes he's been in. Yeah.
Exactly. And Adam, I know when we initially looking at the notes right now, I know you talked about you know, Tala and Ned B dying, and you were kind of bummed out about that.
Yeah, it's something that I think we've seen a lot recently in the Disney era of Star Wars, where we introduce a lot of cool characters and then we just have to kill them, you know, like even, you know, like, you know, the running joke about the sequel trilogy is like, well, let's kill Han Solo. Oh, let's kill Luke Skywalker. Oh, we killed Princess Leia. You know what I mean? It's like all these characters are just falling left and right. And the entire cast of Rogue One, Val, Beckett, Rio, a ton of memorable characters from Solo. The decision to kill Garsa Fwip in Book of Boba Fett was a tough one for me.
Mistake that Kathleen Kennedy has ever made.
Ever made.
There it is.
And yet Cara Dune still lives, you know? So like
she's starring in a new movie, Adam. I don't know if you've heard of
Listen, I don't know if you knew this, but Disney canceled Cara Dune. And like, okay, like this is a side note, but if your main selling point for a movie that you're in is that Disney canceled you, there is nothing interesting about your movie. I'm sorry.
I don't think I can actually publicly comment on that, which is funny. We'll talk about it after that. I don't think I can. Wait, Adam knows why. Adam knows why. I'll tell you.
Okay,
I'll tell you after if you do enough digging on my LinkedIn, you can figure it out pretty quick.
Big Herd. I listen. If you know anything about me, it's that I have not done my research. So I'm so sorry. Anyway,
but yeah, you know, it's a thing of I get it. Like, look, you have to kill characters, but I think it's just a symptom of doing shows that exist in these closed off periods that, you know, you can't kill off the main characters, obviously. So you have to bring some level of drama to it. It's just that I get invested in these characters and I find them relatable, and then they're gone.
Well, and like, you know, they didn't kill Kira in Solo. So like, you don't have to kill the characters. So like it's some people feel expendable and when they shouldn't, because like that's like they're like you said, we start caring about these characters and then all of a sudden they're like, nope, gone, they're dead. But yeah,
absolutely. And just for me, my main sort of overrunning complaint with modern Star Wars is that there's just not enough aliens. and furthermore, there's not enough good alien characters. Like, say what you will about the prequels, but I mean, Watto, Sebulba, Boss Nass, Jar Jar Binks, like Dexter Jetster, all these memorable alien characters.
Drell, yeah, you gotta
Ben Quadranero.
Yeah, you gotta really Mazameda, you gotta Sly Moore.
But like they're all like important. They have something to do in the story. And it's a level of, now we're concerned about shoving as many humans into a Star Wars story as we can. And I just don't dig it. I don't dig it. Like I could name 10, 15 characters from all the new Disney stuff where I was like, why isn't this an alien? Like Benicio del Toro, why aren't you an alien? It's great that we got Benicio del Toro, but like paint his skin blue. Like, let's get moving here. Like, I'm tired of seeing humans.
Famous actors to be aliens, right? They were like, we got Tilda Swinton and she's in Star Wars, but she's like Amon Calamari. I'll be like, yes.
Yeah.
We did it. Like Brad Pitt as a Chiss. You're like, yep, we did it.
Yeah.
Man. Like, we're here, baby.
Yeah, that's what I want. Like, Andy Serkis is not the only person that needs to do motion capture. Like you can get, and the closest we got in the sequel trilogy was Maz, and I love Maz, but what's she doing? She's not doing anything in episode 8. She's not doing anything in episode 9.
Is it jetpack in episode 8?
Listen,
in episode 9?
Let me tell you, she was doing something, and it was the master coder,
the Red Palm Bloom,
the red. That's what she was calling it.
But all I'm trying to say here is Ned B was a new droid character, and I loved him. He was a sweet boy. He didn't say a word, and he died like a champion. And
he did.
Frick was like a dirty fascist mole, and I loved him. And I just want more weird aliens in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Hashtag more
really
weird
am
aliens.
Surprised. I am surprised now that you bring up like the Tala Ned B of it all, and with Andor being 5 years after this show, probably, or whatever, they really just could have kept those characters, or at least Ned B, and just had him walking around. Because I feel like the path is a very direct, reference, and will eventually become part of the Alliance in some capacity, right?
Definitely.
And so maybe we get O'Shea Jackson running around or something in Andor. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I was half expecting Saw Gerrera to be mentioned here in this episode, or even show up, because I was just getting the idea that this is moving toward what he's doing sort of when he has young Jyn Jyn Erso at his side. And it's also kind of weird to kill Tala and Ned B in the more or less the same way that K2SO dies in Rogue One. And so we know that Star Wars by its nature gets repetitive. It's poetry, it rhymes, but I just wish it didn't have to be Ned B.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a quick question? Which is, Absolutely. They mentioned in episode 2 or whenever Ned B first showed up, where they were like, he doesn't talk, or he doesn't talk unless he needs to. Did you think that Ned B was going to say something before he died? You know what I mean? Like, I thought for some reason, they were going to that would have been the big.
That he had a Silent Bob moment where he doesn't talk until the very, very end when you have to make an important point.
Right. And it was George Clooney as the voice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
When what's the
Kentucky's own George Clooney
in Simpsons, right? When she talks in the movie, do you remember? And it was some famous actress, ended up being the voice of what is the baby's name in
Maggie?
Simpsons? Maggie.
Wow.
That's why I can't remember.
You know what would have been really, really funny after the entire history of the prequels if Ned B's voice is Leonardo DiCaprio. They just
he's finally in it, man.
He's finally in it. He's finally in it. That would, I think they should do that at some point. Just do put Leo in Star Wars just to
I love it.
Hey, we got Matt Berry as 8D8 or whatever. So
that's true. That's true. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I felt like maybe we are seeing sort of the limitations of the volume a little in Kenobi, whereas I felt like with Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, even though Book of Boba Fett's all on Tatooine, you get a lot of like open shots of like the settings and everything. Whereas even when we went to Jabim in this episode, everything seemed very, and it's probably by design to make it a little claustrophobic because it's such an intimate situation happening between Vader and Kenobi. But I just wish we could sort of see more of that planet instead of like what's very obviously the cave stage.
Yeah. It was the first time where like it didn't feel like the volume was like, like you were actually there. It felt like it was just a set. Like to me, at least. I don't know about what everybody else feels, but I kind of agree.
I just wish like there was a little more like I could get a sense of, because I know Jabim from the comics, but like I just couldn't get a real handle of like what this planet is. It just felt very desert planet, which we've seen a ton of. So I would have liked to see more of it.
There is nothing but desert planets in Star Wars. So
I've never seen. So I don't know.
You've not okay. Gotcha.
Not Star Wars. Not
so
Star Wars.
you've never seen a Star Wars. Okay.
I've never. Well, that's the secret.
Okay.
I've never
that's
I'm just lying.
I love it. So I kind of want to transition a little bit. We've talked about Reva a little bit, and Adam, we talked a little bit off screen about her journey through the series and kind of like I kind of want to talk about her journey in terms of like where we've been, where we're going, because like she is the catalyst for the series. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
None of this happens without Reva trying to capture Obi-Wan Kenobi to get revenge on Vader. So what has stood out to you the most about her journey? And Brandon, we could start with you, or whoever wants to go first. What has stood out to you about her journey through the series, and where do you think that she's going?
Yeah, for sure. Seeing her flashback was really great. Maggie, you had some thoughts about Reva, just like her journey throughout the show.
Yeah, I mean, we were in disagreement this morning as to whether she was actually stabbed during Order 66. I made him watch it like 3 times because he thought it was a flashback, and I think it really happened, which makes me like, if anyone wants to tweet at me, I'm looking for answers about which lightsaber injuries are fatal and which ones aren't, because I keep getting thrown.
Agreed.
It's fine. It's a plot device.
She did tweet it, and then Star Wars responded, be like, "What questions do you have?"
it just like I saw a lot of the Qui-Gon stuff this week. That like people getting stabbed in Star Wars, and like Qui-Gon is just dead, but everybody else is just like,
the writing was on the wall.
It's a flesh wound. It's a flesh.
Yeah, he's like, I'm getting out while the getting's good. You guys go ahead.
All this to say, I think her character is so interesting. We all know Order 66, and to see someone who survived that and the impact that it had on them, I think she feels very different than some characters and villains that I've seen in Star Wars before. I love kind of the shift that we're getting between her very strong front and then these like more vulnerable seeming moments. And like that scene of them at the door was just like, I was actually on the edge of my seat. And then there's some sadness to her character, I think, which is kind of the nature of playing in this space between the prequels and the original trilogy, which is we know what happens. And so while we don't know exactly how her story ends, we know that she's not going to have her goal, which honestly, and this kind of plays back into what you were talking about, Adam, with these characters who are kind of in and out. There's some sadness to losing them, or, like I want her to Reva to achieve her goal, but I know she's not going to. But it honestly makes the trilogy more poignant to me, the way that like Rogue One made A New Hope feel different. Seeing these individual people outside of just the Skywalkers and their friends and family, all of these people who are part of this movement, and seeing their stories in real life, it makes watching the original trilogy mean something different, because we see all the people who played their part in defeating the bad guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, Reva's just like super fascinating. I mean, I don't think we've really seen a character. We've seen characters that have survived Order 66. We've seen characters turn to the dark side and then turn back to the light. But I don't think we've seen a character like Reva that is playing the long con for revenge. You know, like she has succumbed to darkness and wants to get revenge on Darth Vader, but she's not like a simp for the Empire, you know, like she has her own kind of goals.
Good use of the word simp, by the way. I
try to keep up with the lingo. But yeah, and you know, I think it's really interesting to see where she's come, because I think when she was first introduced, at least for me, I was like, oh, another Inquisitor. You know, I didn't really have any thoughts beyond that because we've seen Inquisitors in Rebels and stuff. So it wasn't like, oh, this is going to be a huge new character. But, you know, clearly she is the sort of the main thrust of the series. And I don't really know what's going to happen to her, which is interesting. You know, like I think the finale sort of hinges on the question of, does she die or doesn't she? And if she doesn't die, then Obi-Wan is not tied up in this neat little package. So does that mean we're getting a second season or a spin-off series? Or, you know, like it opens a lot of doors. Maybe they'll just do a comic, but I have a feeling that, you know, that's not going to be the case.
They're not going to Crimson Reign it.
It's interesting too, because I truly feel like after this, Obi-Wan's story is over. You know, like people talking about a second season of Kenobi, it's like, okay, now if you do a second season and it's called Darth Vader, right? Or it's called Reva, then I totally understand what you're getting at, because it's still the same time period. You can still explore Reva, Vader, you can throw CGI Tarkin back in it, you know, you can have Palpatine show up, do whatever. But there's just not really any room there for an Obi-Wan story to me, because that feels very lose-lose. It's like, okay, we're going to come back and do more Kenobi. It either has to be a whole story on Tatooine, which God forbid, we know people hate that. You know, I'm the only person in Star Wars fandom that likes the planet Tatooine. Or they take him off the planet again, and then that's also lose-lose. It's like, oh, well, Luke's alone again. You know? So like, I don't know how they maneuver around that.
I think that there are definitely stories to be told, like, because like there's still 9 years after this, like there's a lot of time for Ewan to become Alec Guinness. Would I like them to do a second season? Absolutely. Like this, I think I was a little skeptical about, you know, bringing Vader back, but then like they explained to me like, no, Vader is essential to like for this series to work, and like that's absolutely been true, and like it is totally deepened my love for A New Hope. It's deepened my love for the characters. Like I would love to see more, and I kind of want to, you know, we're talking about Reva and her like journey. I don't know if you guys listen to X-Ray Vision. It's a wonderful you know, kind of nerdy podcast from Crooked Media, which they do, you know, Pod Save America, Pod Save the World, all that stuff. And they put out a theory. Jason Concepcion put a theory out that, like, you know, Roken talks about his wife.
Oh, right.
His wife, you know, that was taken by the Empire. Like the implication is that she was killed by the Empire. But like Roken and Reva don't see each other in this episode. So like, I think it'd be really, really interesting if the last episode, because like I think they're definitely going to Tatooine. Reva's going to be there. Vader's going to be there. Everyone's going to be there. But like, how interesting would it be that like, you know, I think it would be really, really interesting to finally see like, you know, a partner saving someone from the dark side. You know, like it feels like that's what they've done in Star Wars, especially in the prequels, was like, oh, Anakin turned to the dark side because he you know, he got upset. Yeah, exactly. So like, if Roken saves Reva, and like then that's the series is like her atoning for her mistakes, that's really interesting to me because I like that character so far. I like what they've done, like just fully the starting with Order 66, showing it from a kid's perspective, and then like, you know, finding a redemption arc in that, I think would be really, really interesting. And I kind of want to transition a little bit to like, you know, just her fight with Vader, because like it just
bonkers.
That entire like the sequence where Vader just walks into the hangar and just full on just grabs onto the ship and just holds it. I was like, there's no words other than holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. I thought, like, you know, they're kind of doing like the super powerful Vader, and I think in a really compelling way that makes sense. Like, and then like for them to like move on and like for him to be okay, he had the wrong ship, I think is really interesting. And then go ahead.
I was just gonna say I really enjoy it because not only is it connecting the prequels and the original trilogy and informing them more, but it's also informing the sequel trilogy just in that. I think this Darth Vader is who Kylo Ren wants to be.
Absolutely.
He wants to be the big, scary, ultra powerful Sith Lord. And even, you know, Rise of Skywalker, the scene where Kylo and Rey are sort of pulling the ship back and forth with the Force, like that felt very much framed and everything the same way as this scene from Kenobi. So I like getting those little glimpses too of just the sort of the rage that exists.
The rage that exists in both Vader and Reva, because like because like she never had a chance in that fight, but like throughout the entire thing, you feel her. Moses Ingram does a great job of conveying that emotion, and like there's a really cool balance of like Vader being a badass and Reva getting getting a couple like, you know, swings in, but not fully like there was no way she was going to do anything. Maggie, what did you think of that fight between Vader and Reva? And like because to me it feels like parts of it do feel a little Force Unleashed where Vader's doing it, and like it kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? It feels like parts of it give to like kind of the worst to the Star Wars theories of the world, you know, where they're like, oh, sorry. Never mind. Okay. You've got to tell me before. I'm sorry.
No, I know. He doesn't know who I am.
I know. But it just, what did you think about the entire, you know, from when Vader pulls the ship down to when he stabs Reva? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I had the same thought about Rey and Kylo fighting over the ship in the air. I was like, oh, that's cool. It feels like it's tying this whole universe together. The fight itself, honestly, I had a pretty visceral reaction with him not even pulling out his saber and just like moving her around and then taking her saber and like he was in control the whole time. And honestly, it was so villainous, right? Because we've seen like he's so scary. This whole series is like really made me feel, I don't know if it's how people felt when they watched the original trilogy, but by the time I watched the original trilogy, Darth Vader was like, I knew the song and I knew they played it at baseball games and I'd seen the figurines. And so he was already kind of a bit, but it's so scary in this show. And there's a cockiness to it that was so patronizing. It felt very sexist. It felt like he had so little respect for her and this, like it was so important to her. And so it was really like wrenching to watch, honestly.
I think it's interesting too that we essentially got to see two dark siders go at it, and so usually the dynamic in these duels is someone being very evil and, you know, like trying to cheat or, you know, however you want to perceive that, to use the dark side to their advantage, where we have to root for a hero that can't give in to those urges, you know, like and when they do, they get very close to turning. we don't have to worry about that here because they're both already villains. And so you can just watch them go off on each other in a way that I don't think we see in more civilized duels with Jedi and stuff. So
there's something to me about like just seeing Vader like toy with her that just the moment where he like pulls the saber together. One of my friends made the point that he does not touch his lightsaber even once.
Yeah,
he's like, this is beneath me. I'm going to throw you yours and you're going to fight me. That's how we're doing it. And like, there's something to that where he's just like, you are so beneath me that I'm not even going to use my weapon to beat you. I'm going to use yours. And like, she's trying as hard as she can and still can't really get anything in, which go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say, I mean, just thinking about next week and what we're going to see with this sort of rematch between Obi-Wan and Vader, now that we've seen just the absolutely ridiculous stuff that Vader's done, like in the series so far. I mean, he touched his lightsaber to a vat of crystals and set them on fire and then dragged Obi-Wan through them. You know, like that's bonkers. Like that's something
personal, man. Like
that's something I never thought I'd ever see in my life. You know what I mean? So he's like snapping people's necks. He's popping up like Michael Myers. Like it's just crazy. So like what are we going to see in this finale? Because, it can't be like the duel in Revenge of the Sith, and so is it going to be more force powers and things like that? I mean, I don't know. It's interesting.
Brandon, have you talked about what you thought about the Reva versus Vader?
Oh, I thought it was great. I thought it was I like, again, him seeing Darth Vader. Again, I'm not gonna disparage other people and what they like about Star Wars, what they don't like about Star Wars. But when you see Vader pull down a ship, and then when you see Vader hold two lightsabers, there is something visceral. They're like, all right, that's fucking cool. Like, wait a second, like this is pretty cool, guys. Like I love heady Star Wars, I love mythological Star Wars, I love the Joseph Campbell Star Wars. But sometimes when Vader's holding two red lightsabers, you're like, wait a second, this is pretty neat, guys. This is pretty cool.
Totally agree.
And so it was very again, I think Maggie was saying how menacing he was, how scary he was. It was very much the Rogue One Vader of it all. Which was very cool to see in person, and seeing it again kind of tied even 10 years before that. And I'm very interested to see what that means for, like you were saying, for the finale. I don't know where that's going to be, right? If there is a second match, which I assume there will be, is it going to be on this ship? Is it going to be on Tatooine? Is it going to be on a random moon before they get to Tatooine? Whatever it is, right? Like, I don't know what that means. I assume it's going to be more of a fair fight. I assume it's going to be something. I think Obi-Wan will technically win, right? So that it's a win-loss. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
And like you still have the line when last we met, I was a learner, but now I am the master. So like you have
and
to
Obi-Wan once thought as you do, right? He has to say something about him.
He has to appeal to him to turn back.
He has to do something. So
I kind of transitioning a little bit into the final part of our conversation. I want to transition to whether we think that we're going to see Tatooine. There are a couple things that I want to mention, because on the one hand, like they've clearly set up Reva going to Tatooine, and then by default Vader going to Tatooine. But does that kind of feel like super close to like, why wouldn't Vader look at his old homes, like his stepbrother's homestead? And like, go ahead.
My assumption is Vader is not going to make it to Tatooine, because I think this ship that Obi-Wan and everybody's on, I don't know if it's going to have like an escape pod or a shuttle or something, but I do feel like they're about to split up. Like if Vader and them are coming for Obi-Wan, he's going to, just like he does in the Death Star, he's going to separate himself from the main group and distract Vader so they can do what they need to do. So I think like the finale's probably Roken and that gang getting Leia to Alderaan, and you know, in the midst of that happening, Reva is going to Tatooine to get Luke, but I'm not fully sure on Reva's motivations for Tatooine. Like, is she going to get revenge on Vader? Like, does she think that by, like, she's going to kill Luke? Is that her motivation? Or, like, is this more aimed at Obi-Wan because he sort of told her, you know, all he's going to be thinking about is me. He won't see you coming. Whereas Vader knew the entire time that what Reva was up to. And so it's almost like Kenobi did use her against Vader. So I'm just sort of wondering what Reva ultimately wants to do on Tatooine. But I don't think Vader is going to be part of it. I think Vader and Obi-Wan is happening somewhere else, whether it's back on Jabim or Mustafar again or wherever.
That'd be great. I haven't thought about that.
And that's
the castle. That'd be cool.
So, like, the concept art that we have of Obi-Wan and Vader fighting, it's on Mustafar, isn't it? Like with the
kind of looks like
the lava. So, like, that'd be really, really cool. There are a couple of things that, like, are in my head right now, to where I think that, you know, they've obviously set up Reva and Owen, like, I kill vermin on my farm all the time. So, like, yes, that makes sense for me to, like, for her to, like, show up to Owen's farm.
Yeah.
At the same time, they've also been setting up Qui-Gon showing up. Like, he's been trying to communicate, and, like, so we're at the last episode, and, like, Qui-Gon still hasn't showed up. And then to me, there's another thing, and I know this might sound super fan fiction-y, and, like, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, Star Wars theory. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, cool. I've shrank about 6 inches just to reach his level. Anyway, so I kind of think that Padme is going to show up at the end, at the very, very end, and here's how. I don't think that, you know, it's going to be a flashback. I think what's going to happen after everything that happens, Obi-Wan and Vader fight, Obi-Wan and Reva fight. Obi-Wan's taking Leia back to Alderaan, and he's getting one last look. And instead of seeing a young Leia, he sees a young Padme, and like, just looking back. And it's just like that. Like, I don't know what, like, brought that to my head, into my mind, but just the idea of him, like, getting one last look at Leia and him seeing Padme. Like, that
would be nice.
I think that if you were gonna do Padme, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
What do y'all think?
Speaking of just getting crazy fanficky on it, I've been thinking about this final duel and when Qui-Gon might show up, and I'm secretly hoping for a sequence similar to the Phantom Menace where Obi-Wan and Vader are cut off from each other, and Obi-Wan drops down and goes into the meditation.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And that's when he hears Qui-Gon for the first time.
That'd be great.
That's what I would love to see it. But
I want that too. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, we got to see Qui-Gon at some point, you know, like, or hear him. You know, I don't know exactly how they want to do it. I suspect we'll see him, but yeah, Reva, I guess she's going to go there, and, you know, we're going to see Owen and Beru, and right as she's going to make some sort of terrible decision, I assume Obi-Wan's going to show up and try to fix things. But yeah, I don't know. It's exciting. And also it kind of, you know, this is only a 6-episode limited series. I just wish we could get some, I know, like, it's great that we make shows and stuff that are, like, you know, they don't overstay their welcome, or they're just as long as the story needs or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, I really wish there was some standardization here. So, like, you know, like an HBO series or something like that, where there's nothing more disappointing than getting up at like 3 a.m. and seeing that you've got the 35-minute episode of Mandalorian.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, but you just showed me a 50-minute episode.
What did it say though? Wasn't there the leak that said this was, like, in Canada, it was like 133, or sorry, an hour 33,
If that's the case,
but it was like with a Q&A. So I was like, if a Q&A is 30 minutes or 20 minutes with Deborah Chow and Hayden Christensen, maybe this is an hour.
Right.
Which would be
which
nice.
is still good.
Yeah, I can see it being
I'll take it.
And I kind of want to wrap it up a little bit, and Brandon, you could go ahead and take it. Did Maggie go from there? What do you think the final battle is going to look like? Do you think that, because we've got Hayden showing up as, Attack of the Clones, Anakin. Hello. Who's this? Who's this, Adam?
Hello.
This is Janine.
Janine. Hello, Janine.
Welcome.
Welcome to the show.
Does Janine have any thoughts about the final duel?
Tell me about Reva. What do you think about Reva? Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that was very good points.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what do you think is going to happen in the final battle? Do you think it takes place on Tatooine? And do you think that we see Hayden Christensen unmasked as Vader?
I think
the end of it.
I don't know where it takes place. I really love this Mustafar idea now, and I really love maybe it happening in the shadow of Vader's castle, right? So that Obi-Wan can really physically see kind of what's happening to Vader, what's happening to Anakin, right? And seeing him building this almost monument to his failure and having that happen underneath that. I really love that. I wasn't even thinking about Mustafar because I don't think it would happen on Tatooine, even though Vader has gone to Tatooine in the comics, right? He's gone to Jabba's palace. He's been there. So if the whole argument is he would sense Luke or whatever, I don't think that would be a huge deal. I would love it to be on a different planet. So Mustafar would be great. And then talking about Qui-Gon and Padme, I think it's going to be a Qui-Gon voice cameo. I don't think it'll be physical. And I think Padme's involvement, because every episode they've just skirted around Padme, right? She's been in the corners of this whole show, which is it is very great to see the Padme recognition because she is such a major character that really has not gotten a lot of recognition in any shows. But I really do think, I think about the Return of the Jedi novelization, and I think about Leia's remembering of her mother, all these things. And we see that she's very visual in terms of the ability with her Force, right? And how she's able to connect with people's emotions and people's thoughts. Yeah. And I would love if Obi-Wan said Padme's name out loud, right? And that's how Leia knows who her mother is, right? And that she kind of has a thought of maybe Leia asks Obi-Wan directly, what's my mother's name? Or who are my parents? Or whatever it is. That would be, I think, the most incredible way to bring Padme into it beyond an Natalie Portman cameo. But we'll see. I don't know. Maggie, do you have any thoughts about the final episode?
Yeah. I mean, Padme was the most central character of Star Wars to me. To me, she was the main character of the first three. I come to find out later again that not everybody liked them and that that's not how everybody saw it. But the scene where Obi-Wan almost referenced her to little Leia struck a chord, right? And I think that the general references of her and her role in this series is what I would say is my biggest problem with it so far, because she's so central to Anakin's story. How he became who he is now is because of her. He's always been fixated on her. And so, yes, I agree. I want Leia to get some knowledge of her mother, or at least to know her name. But when I think of their final battle, to me, that's what I want, is for Anakin and Obi-Wan to not have a heart to heart about her, but I think she needs to come up, because that's what I want to know, is how close is he to those emotions, to that heartache? If faced with her name, what does Darth Vader do?
Yeah.
Because we're somewhere in between, right? The prequels and the trilogy, and he did all of this. He became this monster to try to save her, and I just wonder how much of that passion, those emotions, are still underneath the surface. And to me, it seems like the main thing that could kind of take the knees out from underneath him, because from a battle standpoint, he seems to be the clear winner between the two. So to me, that seems like the main thing that can disarm him.
Yeah, and exactly that. I feel like in this final duel, the way that Obi-Wan is going to get the upper hand on Anakin is, appealing to him, by specifically mentioning Padme and also revealing details that Anakin is not aware of, because Anakin is led to believe that he killed her, presumably on Mustafar. That's what he thinks coming from Palpatine. So if Obi-Wan in this duel tells him, Padme believed there was still good in you, there was still light in you, she told me that before she died in my arms, that's something that's really going to jolt Anakin, because that's new information.
Adam, Jesus Christ.
That's
Jesus
new information.
Christ. What are you doing? Like,
and I was also thinking, so and I'm sorry, I'm definitely going off on the fanficky rail again here, but like just thinking on ways of tying these loose threads up and Leia learning more about her mother. Wouldn't it be great to get a scene like almost like as like an epilogue where Leia is on Alderaan and she goes to her mother and it's like, tell me about my mother. And it's almost like the same scene as Obi-Wan telling Luke about Anakin, where it's like he's showing him his lightsaber and everything. Like, can you imagine if like she suddenly opens this like wardrobe and you see like Padme's stuff in there or something, and she's like, let me tell you about your mother, kind of thing. And like, that would just be so great. But
the costumes of Padme Amidala were my entry point into this whole situation that I'm sitting in right now. So
yeah,
this is so good. This is so, God. Now every single person has given me something that I want to see in the finale, and when none of this happens, I'm going on Star Wars Theory. I'm gonna
you got to make a new YouTube channel that complains about Kathleen Kennedy. So that's the rules.
Those are the rules. Those are the rules.
And one last thing. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, here.
Thanks. One other thing that I would really like to see, I don't know how critical it is, but I'm so damn curious about, is I would love more understanding of how Reva got from playing dead on the floor in the Jedi Temple to wherever they found her, to like what that process was like, because they're killing people who are Force sensitive. Why was she an exception? Like, she was a little kid. How does she, like, I want more of her. And I think I love that we've gotten her childhood story, but I would love to see a little bit more of how she, finessed her way into a position so close to Darth Vader from being attempted murdered by him.
Murdered by Darth Vader.
I was just going to go back to the flashback, because there was a great quote in there that I loved, which was, you're a great warrior, Anakin, but your need to prove yourself will be your undoing. And that the usage of great warrior really just rang to me, because it's Luke going to Yoda and saying, I'm looking for a great warrior, a Jedi master, and Yoda telling him that wars don't make you great, so it's almost like a backhanded compliment to Anakin, because he's recognizing how great of a warrior he is, but maybe how poor of a Jedi he's being.
There it is. That's the point. He's a great warrior. He's not a great Jedi. That's it. That like look of disappointment in Anakin's face when the sparring session is over, but also the recognition that Obi-Wan's right. Like, I'm not there yet, kind of thing. It bleeds perfectly into where he's at in Attack of the Clones in terms of like wanting more and all that. Absolutely.
It is interesting that you brought that up, because then how Obi-Wan references Anakin in Episode 4 is cunning warrior.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a difference in his mind, like great and cunning, because that is more of I think what Obi-Wan's fighting style is. Right? It's more cunning than sheer force or sheer, power. But anyway, all good thoughts. This is great.
All good things. All good things.
Critical part of how I almost wonder, what I can't help but feel is the conversation that, again, they had at this door, where she put some of the onus back on Obi-Wan, like, where were you? Which I think she may have meant like in the moment, but to me, it's like all of the Jedi everyone who knew Anakin and to some degree was responsible for continuing to train him and not noticing all of these red flags that, I mean, you can see even in this scene when they're, only one movie into the prequels, where he's already showing these tendencies that he may not be the best equipped to handle this kind of power, and people keep training him anyway because he was such a good warrior, and it blinded people.
Yeah.
And look where it got them.
And it also speaks to just like the like Palpatine's puppetry is on another level, right? Like, because if you go back and watch Revenge of the Sith, the whole idea, him setting up Anakin and being like, if the Jedi don't trust you to go handle General Grievous, like, I'd be worried about that, So like Anakin comes to the council and he's like, I should go to Utapau, which immediately puts the council in the frame of thinking, let's send Obi-Wan there. But that's exactly what Palpatine wants. He wants to keep them apart. And so exactly, where are you? Like, Palpatine constructed this whole thing to keep Obi-Wan away from this huge pivotal moment with Anakin where he's truly going to be alone and can be manipulated to the extreme. So like, yes, Reva, sorry, I was riding a big lizard on a sinkhole planet, but also I was deceived. We all were,
Absolutely. I guess that kind of ends what I wanted to talk about. Are there any kind of final thoughts on the episode as a whole? Kenobi, for me, and it could just be because I'm a sap. This has become my favorite Star Wars story ever, and we're not even finished yet. It takes what I love about The Last Jedi, which has been my favorite Star Wars movie. Takes that, puts it in a show, takes it to characters that I love, and does it in a new way. I'm just so effing excited to see the end of it. And if any of what we've talked about happens, I will Twitter call you guys at 6 a.m. and say, you were freaking right. I knew it.
You were wrong and I hate you.
Right.
No, I would never say that. I love all y'all. Any final thoughts on part 5 of Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I'm just really excited to see the finale and then immediately sort of figure out a time and watch all of them together. Because I think more so this series than Mando and Boba is this truly, because it started as a movie. Mm-hmm. It got turned around into a series and expanded, but it feels the most like a movie because it's just truly consecutive serialized storytelling. So I'm excited to see things I might have missed when I watch them all together.
Yeah. All right. Talking Bays. What do y'all think?
You go ahead.
Oof. Yeah. I'm excited to see it end. I'm sad to see it end. Mm-hmm. What will get me through the next week, my touching moment for the week was Obi-Wan saying, trust Leia to go fix the wiring or whatnot.
Oh,
he didn't even know. He didn't even know. He'd never seen her do electrical wiring, but she said she could do it. And he was like, I trust her. And
he knew.
Adult men so rarely trust young girls. It was so striking to me. And I'm just going to have a warm glow in my heart that'll get me through to the finale from that.
And I just wanted to say I love that scene too, because it also in a weird way reminded me of the scene from Infinity War where Black Panther's get that man a shield. It was get that girl a ladder, immediately.
Get that girl a ladder. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm just very excited for the finale, but also very sad. It was nice having both of those episodes at the premiere and having two episodes at once. But we've been really looking forward to this, and it's only been a month. We've only had a month with this show and these characters. And that's kind of sad. Obviously the story ends when it needs to end. If there's a season 2, there's season 2. But it's been very nice and very touching as a kid that grew up with the prequels to see it on this stage and see it really elevated beyond what we loved as kids and beyond. I mean, that's just been the best, and enjoying it with Maggie and the people on Twitter and then my little brothers especially. It's been very nice for a prequel fan to have this, just as something. And so that is not something I would expect 10 years ago, to have this, and it's just kind of a nice little.
It was kind of an extension of Celebration, honestly, because we came off of such a high and such a fun trip, and that's where it started, right? And so, I mean, we were the first like at home episode was a few days after being home. Yeah. COVID's hitting, and it's like this little recall back to such a fun experience. Yes. And now it's like, oh, next week's Celebration will finally.
Thank you for saying COVID was hitting, because like it truly was hitting.
Yeah,
as Obi-Wan.
Honestly, like, that's we hadn't tested positive yet, but Brandon overslept that first at-home episode, and I was like, I bet he has COVID. There, and then the next week he woke up in time, and I'm like, okay, he's fine. He's over it now. I wasn't quite over it yet, but that was honestly. I had that thought that morning.
If I wasn't waking up at 5:30 a.m., something must be wrong.
He didn't. I'm like, you overslept your Obi-Wan Kenobi alarm. Like something's probably wrong. And later that day, I was right. My spidey sense.
You see, that's just, that's just marriage for you. You know, you absolutely know. Awesome. And with that, my friends, that concludes our episode for today. I want to thank our wonderful, 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 and I'm going to put an extra wonderful because y'all are awesome. And I appreciate y'all coming on. Our wonderful guests for coming on. Brandon and Maggie, where can the people find you?
Where can people find you, Maggie? Where can people find you?
Just on Twitter. Talking Bay with an E. Bay with an E is
Absolutely. Me. 94, yeah. And then you can find me Talking Bay with a Y, 94 on Twitter and everywhere. And then episodes every week, as long as I can, on iTunes and Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Next week is my interview again with Academy Award winner Roger Christian, who created the lightsaber. So he keeps coming back on. Oh. Yeah, he's back.
I didn't know this. Yeah. I'm learning all kinds of things on this session. That was a pretty early.
It was number 4, episode 4,
and that's been my favorite episode for a long time.
So he's back.
So we'll see how it compares to episode number 4.
Absolutely. And Adam, where can they find you, Betty?
I'm at Adam Frazier, Frazier on Twitter, and I write a weekly column for Slash Film called Star Wars Bits that comes out every Friday. And yeah, just follow me there, I guess.
Awesome. Love hearing that. And if I can pretend that my guests aren't here for a minute, I have loved all their stuff for so long, and it's just an honor to have everybody on here. Brandon does incredible interviews with people that I really respect, and I really respect him. And Adam has always been a wonderful writer and someone that I always looked up to. But they can't hear this, so they don't know. They don't know. And Maggie, I'm really, really impressed that this is your first episode and you fucking killed it.
Thank you. I was like, how are you going to spin my accomplishments? Like, and
it's you just, that's what we all do. You came on and like doing this is hard. And the fact that this was your first episode and you totally
crushed it.
I'm just so impressed.
What a welcoming experience. And I had a great time.
You are welcome.
If anyone's out there,
anytime.
Bring me on your podcast.
Absolutely. Bring Maggie on your podcast. She will do it, and she does a great job. Bring her on, please. Every Star Wars podcast.
How many podcasts can I get on before Brandon has to put me on his?
This has to be a background extra in Kenobi, and she can be on the podcast. That's all that it takes.
There you go.
So if anyone out there knows an easy way to be officially associated with Star Wars, let me know. I'm on the lookout.
And you guys can find me on Twitter at Star Wars Bill. If you're not already, please follow Skywalking Through the League on Twitter at SkywalkingTL. And y'all made me laugh with that Kenobi thing. I appreciate y'all. And as always, Godspeed, Rebels.